Not every day you get a musket. Surprise.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I wasn't expecting it, but I'd like to deliver the 60-minute speech I have prepared, if that's okay.
Well, I had thought that Chairman Pai was going to introduce issues about the FCC before I even got on here, so maybe I'll start with the big picture. How many here have heard of wardrobe malfunctions? How many have heard of the FCC? How many of you are currently on the internet using your cell phone right now? All right.
Still works.
So I guess it's still working. All right. But generally, the FCC oversees the communications industry in the United States. This is an enormous sector. It, over the last 30 years, has been responsible for a great part of our productivity growth and a very large section of our innovation that has been occurring. So it's a tremendously important industry. But I thought maybe I'd just first throw out a question. How would you explain to your grandmother what the FCC does? And I'll let anyone answer.
That's a good question. Well, first and foremost, thanks to the American Conservative Union for inviting me to CPAC. Thanks for the award. I very much appreciate it. Thanks to my colleagues for serving alongside me at the FCC. We have the privilege of serving at one of the most important agencies in the entire United States government. By some measures, the communications sector represents about 1/6 of America's economic output. And to me, at least, the FCC is at its best when it unleashes the entrepreneurial spirit of markets as opposed to the all-knowing vortex of government to make people's lives better. And that means getting internet access into rural areas, empowering entrepreneurs in all kinds of places to pursue their dreams, giving people the ability to educate their kids, to get health care, to do all the things that technology allows you to do. And so under our FCC, at least, we believe that the wisdom resides not among a few unelected bureaucrats in Washington, but among all the entrepreneurs and citizens across this great country. And that's what we've tried to do.
So in 2018, within telecom, what do you see as our largest societal economic goal for now?
In our bailiwick, I think it's closing what I call the digital divide, the gap between those who have access to the internet and other technologies and those who don't. And to me, that's not just an academic talking point. I grew up in a very small town in southeast Kansas, which all too often finds itself on the wrong side of the digital divide. And in this current job, I've spent, last year alone, I went to over 20 states, spent over 4,000 road miles, visiting places like Capon Springs, West Virginia, and Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota, and Durand, Wisconsin, understanding for myself the struggles that people have being unable to use technology to better their lives. And to me, at least, those are the unsung communities of this country. They don't often make the front pages of newspapers, but if our country is going to recognize the human capital that resides in every single one of our hearts, we need to empower Americans to take advantage of these technologies. And so that's why we focus very much on the digital divide. I think it'll unleash untold economic benefits, but also social benefits for our country.
So, Commissioners,
Well, I'm happy to jump in on that question as well. Thank you so much for having me. Great kudos to the chairman for his award. I think the chairman did a wonderful explanation. I think one other thing I'd add to that, and he alluded to in his first answer, is that our job at the commission, as I see it, is to remove government from the entrepreneurs that are trying to get communication technologies into your hands. So that's where we spend a great deal of our time, is taking those burdens off the books. It certainly monopolizes our time, as it rightly should. For too long, the FCC has imposed burdens on every provider on some vision that they've had from Washington, D.C., rather than letting technology lead the course, the free market take the direction it wants to go. Let consumers benefit from those things that come. So I think that's something we spend so much time doing, and rightfully so.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations also to the chairman. It's great to be at CPAC this year. When I look at my job at the FCC, the stuff that we do can pretty quickly get into the technical weeds, but when you step back, I really think my job at the Commission is to put policies in place that are going to help create jobs, they're going to help spur investment, and they're going to help grow the economy for the benefit of all Americans. When you get outside of D.C., when people care about telecom, one of the things they are passionate about is getting better, faster, cheaper broadband. And to Commissioner O'Reilly's point, the last few years at the FCC was continuously imposing more regulations, more paperwork burdens, which was putting the U.S. in the wrong direction. We have a number of very large providers in this country, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon. To some extent, they can withstand the regulatory onslaught of all these burdens, but there are thousands of smaller providers you've never heard of that are competing to be the first internet service provider in a rural community or the first competitive provider. Those are the ones that have been unable to withstand the regulatory onslaught from DC, and that right now, for the past year, we've been removing unnecessary regulations. That's going to spur more investment, more deployment, and help connect more Americans to digital opportunity.
So Chairman Pai, as was mentioned when you were receiving your award, and maybe this is the true reason you've done all of this, because you anticipated such a lovely award. But you have gone through a very tumultuous time with a lot of vitriol that was directed at you personally. And so the question is, why did you stick with it? And secondly, how does that fit in with the larger picture of what you're trying to accomplish within your tenure at the FCC?
So I'll take the first part of that question. I had a choice to make when I learned that I'd be tapped by President Trump to be the chairman in January 2017. Some people urged me to go for sacrifice bunts and singles and try to nibble around the edges, make some minor changes. But I don't play small ball. And I decided that I wanted to make a fundamental change in the way the agency operates. I think it's important for us to set rules of the road that allow the American people to take control of their own lives instead of having it run out of a Washington bureaucracy. And that's why, among other things, we decided after a long process to get rid of government regulation of the internet. The internet wasn't broken in 2015. Those with memory and an intellectual honesty will remember that we were not living in some digital dystopia before Washington bureaucracy saved us from ourselves. And we decided that, look, the best way to encourage more investment and innovation in terms of the internet, getting better, faster, cheaper internet access out there, is to get rid of these heavy-handed regulations and let the market, backed up by consumer protection rules, decide how the internet is regulated. And I think the results were going to speak for themselves, just as they did from the mid-1990s all the way until 2015. In terms of the vitriol, it's not been a pleasant time, but as Gandalf said in The Lord of the Rings, these are the times, so do all who see to live such times, but all that is left for you to choose is what to do with the time that is given to you. And to me, at least, so long as I have the privilege of serving this position, I'm going to keep swinging for the fences and let the chips fall where they may. And the poisonous political culture in which we find ourselves continues. I'll keep speaking out about that too, but it's not going to deter me from my mission of delivering value for the American people and choosing that over getting a nice headline in the newspaper. Thanks.
So as an economist, one of the things that I've been happiest to hear about the FCC is the development of the Office of Economics and Analytics.
Yeah.
And I think this was very important, but let me ask you, why did this need to occur in such a formal fashion, and what's the reason behind it?
So I think most Americans would be shocked to know that in some regulatory agencies, including until recently the FCC, we could adopt a regulation. We could tell you, the American people, you shall abide by this rule without ever determining whether or not the benefits are greater than the costs. We never made a formal analysis of that. And to me, that put the cart before the horse. The predicate for anything any governmental agency does should be, is this producing more benefits for the American people that it imposes in terms of costs? And so from our part, at least, we created this Office of Economics and Analytics to make sure that we had a process in place. So it's not just the lawyers and the technologists and others who are deciding to set policy. The economists have a seat at the table, too. And this is consistent with, I think, what some of the other agencies have done. And over time, the benefits are going to speak for themselves, because I think that it's important, I think, to make sure that we have a process in place so it's not just a politician sticking his finger into the wind, it's an economist very carefully looking at the facts and helping us make a more informed judgment.
So one of the things that we have been noticing is how in different election cycles, the FCC can very quickly swing and change policy, attempt to, or successfully, and in this case, I think very legitimately should have done this. But how do we know that that can't swing back again? What can we do to avoid this regulatory ping pong every time there's a new election cycle?
Go for it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the question. I think what we can do is make sure as conservatives that we elect good people to both the House and Senate and make sure that President Trump gets reelected. But there's another thing you can do. We're going to have a fight over the Obama internet rules in the next couple months in the U.S. Senate. And that's going to matter, and that vote matters. And so making sure that people take the right course on that really does affect what policies we're able to keep in place going forward. So could certainly use everyone's help along on those lines.
Also, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Brett. Yeah.
I'll just simply add, part of it, we are moving quickly. We are adopting actions that will deregulate, but we're also trying to institutionalize something different at the Commission. This touches on the Office of Economics that you mentioned. Whether it's 8 years or whatever it is ultimately that we're out of control of the majority at the FCC, that office is going to continue. And if we can institutionalize this idea that you can't pass regulations without rigorous economic analysis, that's something that will have a lasting impact regardless of who's in control.
The other thing we can do is also change some of the other processes about how the agency works. I mean, I think most people would be shocked to learn that for decades, until 2017, the FCC voted on a number of different proposals and orders, and only after the vote happened did it let you, the American people, see what it was we were voting on. That is crazy. I mean, these are substantial decisions that affect the entire economy, that affect our society, but the agency refused to make them public until after the vote. In my second week in office, I said no to all the Chicken Littles who said, no, it's dangerous to do this, it's illegal to do this. And I said 3 weeks before every one of our monthly meetings, I'm going to publish on the internet the actual text of what it is we propose to do so that every American, regardless of whether they can hire a Washington lawyer or lobbyist to figure out what's in these documents, they can make up their own mind. And that's one of the simple process changes that will benefit the people in the time to come. I don't know who my successor is going to be. What I can tell you is he or she will face a big fight if they decide, you know what, let's go back to making these decisions behind closed doors. Let's make sure there's just 3 or 5 unelected bureaucrats in DC and some of the few lucky lobbyists who get the scoop. Let's make sure that we are the ones making the decision. So if we make some of these process reforms, we can ensure that at the very least, the agency is open and transparent, and it is the people's agency, not the lobbyists' agency.
So I thought maybe we could think about what are some big topics that people are talking about within telecommunications, 5G, Internet of Things.
AM radio.
Yes. Commissioner O'Reilly, would you like to maybe talk about 5G a little bit?
Well, sure, absolutely. For many of you, you've heard about 5G and you don't exactly know what it is. We don't know exactly what it's going to become. What it is the opportunity for new wireless technology to be developed in the next couple of years to supplement what already exists as a world leader in our communications sector that we have today. That is going to bring lower latency, higher speeds, greater capacity, a more advanced service than you have in your pocket in this very moment. And that's a great opportunity for we are going to lead this sector going forward in the United States, opposed to where everyone else is trying to take our lead from Japan, China, South Korea. They all want to be ahead of where we are today. And the truth is 5G is that next step that we need to take. And for our take and what we need to do is make sure there's a couple of things. And my good colleague here has been leading the effort on wireless infrastructure, making sure we can get the networks out. And he can certainly describe that better than I can ever do. And the second is we got to make sure there's enough spectrum, and that it gets into the weeds, I know, gets into some of our parlance in terms of technology, but make sure there's enough spectrum and resources for our networks to be able to operate.
Yeah, I'll simply pick up on that. I think when you look at 2018, 2019, when you look towards the near future, we're at a really interesting, hopeful point in telecom law. The technology is starting to progress at an accelerating rate. You're all familiar with 4G, the current generation of cellular service that we all enjoy. We're going to this thing called 5G, which can be better, faster internet, but it's going to enable a lot of this interesting technology that you're hearing about, whether it's autonomous driving, remote surgery applications, virtual reality. That's going to be enabled by this transition to 5G. But we do have a problem right now, which is that our infrastructure deployment regime is not tailored to support the type of massive new deployment that we need to make 5G a reality, to make sure that the United States leads the world in 5G. If we get the right regulatory framework in place, this transition to 5G could be $275 billion in network investment, 3 million new jobs, 50,000 jobs a year simply in the actual construction jobs deploying these new networks, and it can add $500 billion to the GDP. So one of the things that we're very focused on right now at the FCC is streamlining the federal permitting and approval process that right now threatens to hold us back. I believe that we have the votes and the ability to get that done this year, and that's going to end up being a big result for the American people.
We've been talking a lot about what is happening within the United States and what the FCC is doing for the environment, for these innovations in the United States. Is there a role for the FCC internationally that is important to work with?
I think there is, absolutely. I mean, one part of it is just international leadership. When it comes to 5G, for example, as my colleagues have pointed out, we aren't acting alone. Other countries want to take the lead. They want to win 5G just because they perceive that we won 4G. And so it's important for us when we go into all of these multilateral fora and whatnot for us to say, look, the American policy is this. We want to be forward-thinking. We don't want to benefit any particular company or sector. We want the marketplace to decide. And that's an important message to convey. The other thing is, even beyond 5G, we have a really important role in coordinating with our fellow agencies around the world. For example, the biggest complaint we get at the FCC is about robocalls. I'm sure many of you get them all the time. It drives me crazy all the time to get these robocalls. For a lot of years, this issue just sat on the shelf because the previous agency was focused on more politically salient things that would benefit some of their preferred constituencies. But to me, at least, in order to attack this problem, I've had to speak with the chairs of various agencies from India to other countries and tell them, look, this is an important priority for the United States. We would like your cooperation. And simply the agency working and sending a message with these other agencies goes a long way. American leadership still matters a lot, and I recognize that this isn't the biggest issue compared to national defense and the others, but nonetheless, it's American leadership that's important to show.
I think kind of as a closing thought, how should we think about the impact of telecommunications on the average American? How does it impact our society? How does it impact our economy?
Yep.
Well, for me, like, I'll jump in. Where I started from, it's really about participating in the new digital economy. Where you live shouldn't be the determining factor about the opportunities you have. You should be able to decide to stay in your home community, launch an online business, and succeed. And broadband is going to be key to that going forward. And I think that's what we are keeping in mind right now at the Commission.
Yeah, I would agree absolutely with that comment. Excuse me. I think that the benefit you see from three of us is we work really hard to make sure it's not about the government that makes decisions, it's about the providers making sure that they serve consumers. The people in this room make sure that the service that they get is the best that it possibly can be, and as new technologies are deployed, that they're able to take advantage of them no matter where they live.
I would agree with all that, and I would just add one more thing. One of the great things about technology, and we tend to discount it because we live in the day, is how incredible it is that we are able to be connected. People in an unprecedented way are able to speak and to hear and to learn and to listen in ways that were unthinkable just a generation ago. And to me, at least, one of the great things about the internet is that voices that in a prior age might have been marginalized because they either didn't have access to the people who are running the media or to other gatekeepers, they simply never saw themselves. They never heard their stories told. And to me, at least, one of the values that is great about America is the culture of free speech and free expression that we have. Anybody is able to speak his or her mind. And I would hope that going forward, as this infrastructure becomes ubiquitous, as the spectrum comes online, those are important, but they're not ends in themselves. What's important is what the networks are for, and it's to give all of you a voice. and I encourage you to use it in the time to come.
So, in parting, what would be the information that we want to give to the audience, to the activists, in terms of what issues they should be looking at, what they should be doing, how they should remain involved in these issues?
Follow the FCC at the www.fcc.gov. Go to our Twitter feeds. I'm Ajit Pai FCC. But first and foremost, learn for yourself what exactly the FCC is doing. The details are exceedingly boring, I will concede, but there's no substitute for the facts. And I think when you see what we're doing in terms of closing the digital divide, restoring the wisdom of the market, deregulating to get the government out of businesses it doesn't have a hand in, you will understand that we are delivering something that is very unique, I think, in regulatory history, which is an unleashed marketplace that will benefit all the American people.
I think that the chairman rightfully was credited for all the good work he did to bring and make sure that the internet is free from regulation going forward, and the old rules from the past administration are thrown away, and that we don't go back towards that in the going future. So what I say to you all is make sure that if you like what we have done, that it not be undermined by those that believe in the old administration, the Obama folks who want to impose those burdens on the internet today, want to reimpose those, and we've got to make sure that what we have decided stays as a matter of law.
I would simply add that tech and telecom policy matters to everyone. It matters to you. The debates that we're having at the Commission are ones that you need to fully participate in. We are in the process of moving the FCC in a very different direction than where it was headed under the Obama administration, moving it away from heavy-handed, intrusive government regulation. These are things that are going to impact your daily lives. So pay attention to it, speak up, and participate in these debates. It's important.
Absolutely.
Well, join me in thanking our commissioners from the FCC and congratulating Chairman Pai on his very well-deserved
Thanks.
award. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Thanks for moderating. It's really, it's great.